Okay, so let's get right into it. There's this new kind of boom happening in the Amazon rainforest. It's not for gold or rubber, but for a psychedelic brew called ayahuasca. We're talking thousands of people flying there looking for healing, for some kind of enlightenment. But what really happens when an ancient tradition like this meets modern tourism? Today, we're going to get the inside scoop from someone who is living it every single day, a Shipibo Shaman.
So the person who's going to be our guide through all this is Guillermo Arévalo. He's a shaman from the Shipibo tribe right in the Peruvian Amazon. And everything we're about to unpack comes from this really fascinating and incredibly honest interview he gave. He's on the front lines of this whole phenomenon, and boy, does he have a lot to say.
All right, so this begs the big question, right? What is going on here? Why are so many people from North America, from Europe, from all over, traveling thousands of miles into a remote jungle just to drink this powerful hallucinogenic tea? Well, according to Arrévalo, the answer is surprisingly simple, and it's deeply human.
He really doesn't mince words. He says it's not just about some adventure trip or a bit of curiosity. Nope. At its very core, this whole thing is a search for healing. People are showing up carrying some really heavy burdens. Personal problems, deep psychological traumas, and a lot of them, a profound sense of depression that they feel modern life just hasn't been able to fix.
But Arrévalo sees something even deeper than just a bunch of individual problems. He actually identifies what he calls a widespread spiritual and psychological crisis happening in the developed world. It's a crisis that goes way beyond one person's history and seems to say something about Western society itself.
So what does this crisis he's talking about actually look like? Well, he says it breaks down into a few key things people are after. They're looking for a self-encounter, a way to finally solve these deep-seated traumas. They want spiritual answers, a path that feels real and true. Some are even desperately hoping for cures to physical illnesses. And for a lot of them, it's about escaping what they see as the empty promise of materialism. They're just searching for something more.
Okay, and this is where the story takes a really critical turn. Arrévalo draws a very, very sharp line in the sand. With this explosion in demand for ayahuasca, two totally different paths have popped up. He calls them folkloric shamanism and authentic shamanism. And believe me, understanding this difference is, well, it's everything.
So let's break this down. On one side, you got this folkloric shamanism. Arrévalo says its goal is simple: money. The practice is just touristic, and the whole focus is commercial. And the result? It's opportunistic, and it can be incredibly dangerous. But then you have the other side, the authentic tradition. Here, the goal is healing. The practice is deeply ceremonial, the focus is spiritual, and the result is a process that is really demanding for sure, but also profound. And when Arrévalo warns about that danger, he's not just being theoretical. This is real. When vulnerable people, who are just looking for help, fall into the wrong hands, the consequences can be absolutely devastating. This is the really dark side of the ayahuasca boom.
Arrévalo says flat out that many of the people calling themselves shamans are nothing more than liars and cheats. They haven't done the training, they don't have the knowledge, and they have zero preparation to guide someone through an experience this powerful. It's gotten so bad, he says, that in his own community, it feels like almost every house now has a self-proclaimed shaman.
Now, here's one of the scariest parts: the use of toxic additives. See, a true ayahuasca brew is made with very specific non-toxic plants. But these false shamans, whether they're just ignorant or they're actually trying to do harm, sometimes mix in other psychoactive plants, like something called toye, which you might know as datura. This is absolutely not part of the tradition, and it is incredibly, incredibly dangerous.
And the consequences of drinking a brew like that? I mean, they're just harrowing. Arrévalo has literally seen people end up in the hospital suffering from psychosis, paranoia, severe psychological damage. These toxic plants can even cause blindness, cardiac arrest, and, in the absolute worst cases, permanent madness or even death. This is the kind of terrifying risk people are taking when they don't know who they're dealing with.
And to really understand just how high the stakes are here, just look at this number. Arrévalo estimates that a staggering 80% of his female patients from developed countries are survivors of rape trauma. These are people in a state of extreme vulnerability searching for profound healing. The thought of them falling into the hands of traffickers and cheats it's just chilling.
Okay, so after hearing all of that, what does an authentic shaman, a true maestro, actually look like?
Well, Arrévalo gives us a really clear picture of the true path, and it couldn't be more different from the commercialized version we've just been talking about.
It's this whole rigorous hierarchy of knowledge. It all starts with a deep, deep understanding of plants. From there, you might reach the level of Los Marias. These are practitioners with such profound knowledge they can navigate other planes of existence. Arrévalo actually identifies himself as being at this level. And then, at the very top, you have the Bomanuna. These are masters who have developed what we might call a sixth sense. This is not something you just learn in a weekend workshop.
And that right there is the heart of the problem. Becoming a real maestro requires an immense amount of sacrifice. We're talking about a strict, disciplined diet that can last for more than a year. Arrévalo says that today, very few young Shipibo people want to commit to that kind of intense apprenticeship. And because of that, the number of true masters is actually shrinking.
All right, let's just pull back for a second, because this whole thing, the decline of authentic shamans and the rise of the fake ones, is not happening in a bubble. It's directly tied to the enormous cultural and economic pressures that the Shipibo people are facing right now.
Arrévalo throws out a number here that's pretty staggering. He estimates his people have gone through a 60% cultural change in just the last few years. Just think about that. That is a massive tidal wave of transformation for any society, and it threatens to wash away these ancient traditions.
So what's driving this huge shift? Well, it's a mix of things. You have young people leaving their villages for the cities, looking for what they call a normal life. They're abandoning the old ways, farming, fishing, hunting, and in some cases, they're straight up renouncing their cultural roots. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of worsening poverty, which creates a desperate need for cash, a need that this whole folkloric shamanism industry is all too happy to fill.
But you know, Arrévalo doesn't leave it there, in a place of despair. He offers this really profound insight. He says, while the Amazon's physical resources are being stripped away, the true renewable resource is knowledge, the ancient wisdom of his people. He believes that if the Shipibo can value this knowledge, can cultivate it, it could be their path to a much better future.
And that brings us right back around and leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. Arrévalo's story is a powerful warning about how complicated cultural exchange can be in our globalized world. It really forces us to ask, when we travel as seekers, as tourists, as patients, what is our responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to the very cultures that hold the healing we're so desperately looking for?